Come with me to a magical place where being labeled the Pork Queen is a compliment, where being nice is just a way of life, and where all leaders of the free world must pass through. Welcome to Iowa. Whether you're a current Iowan, an Iowa expat, or an Iowan at heart, this show is for you. This is the Iowa Podcast. Real Iowans, real talk, no drama. From the Brady Dental Care Studios, it's time to run for mayor. We had Connie on the show, and now we have Councilman Josh Mandelbaum in this studio. Councilman Mandelbaum, thanks for coming on.
Great to be here.
Super exciting. I'm really glad to have you here. Before we get started, I need to remind everybody to subscribe to the show. If you like what you're hearing, give it 5 stars. Tell an Iowan, tell your neighbor about it. And as a reminder, you may be listening online. So if you're doing that, just go to iowapodcast.com. All the podcast badges are there. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everything. Everything is there. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. Research shows I have to tell you that. Otherwise, you might not do it. So, I checked that off my list. So, Councilman Mandelbaum, thanks for coming in. Let's start with your backstory. You told me this really cool story when you were campaigning. Your great-grandfather immigrated to Des Moines in 1870, and you kind of had this funny circumstance where you came upon a house he built, but you didn't know it was his. I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah. So, my family history is like a lot of people's family history. My great-great-grandfather came here looking for opportunity as an immigrant to this country, and he settled in Des Moines, opened a store, built a better life for generations of his family. And part of that story is a little over 30 years after he'd been here, apparently he built a house, and it's right on 21st Street. The house nearly got demolished because it's the last one before the interstate. And I was knocking doors on my last campaign, and the owner comes to the door and says, "Oh, you're Josh Mandelbaum. I've got something I've been meaning to ask you." And usually that's everything from, can you fix this pothole to, stormwater issue, whatever constituent issue. But this one was different.
Yeah.
He's like, "I want to know if you're related to the guy who built this house." And I'm like, "Well, I have no idea who built this house." And turns out it was my great-great-grandfather who'd built the house. And no one in my family knew about that piece of history because, my dad, when he grew up, it would have been his great-grandfather was already long passed. And so it's the type of thing that just easily gets lost. You don't necessarily know. My grandmother grew up near Riverview Park, and I couldn't tell you, this was on my mom's side, I couldn't tell you where that house is. Right. But it's that type of history that gets lost from generation to generation because I always just went to her house in Beaverdale.
Yeah, I totally agree. So was this house like a small house? Your great-grandfather's house? Was it pretty small, or is it still there right now?
It's still there right now.
Cool.
It's one of those houses that when you drive by on the interstate, it's one of the houses you see.
Oh,
it's like
got it.
It's like a 2-story gray house. Pretty standard. It would have been a nice house at the time.
Yeah,
but pretty standard. It reflected he'd been here 30 years when he built that house, so it
Very
reflected
cool.
a lifetime of work.
So I think that's like a good starting point is housing, because that's one of the things you're running on is like more affordable housing, right?
Right.
So one of the things that always confuses me, and I asked Connie this too, but she was in here a couple weeks ago, I think. One of the things that always confuses me is we want to create more affordable housing, but there's this weird balancing act you have to do on city council, and you'll have to do if you're mayor. And that is, the larger the square footage, the more expensive the house. The less the square footage, the cheaper the house. But we need more inventory for families to move in that's larger square footage. So the city council has that like minimum in. So wouldn't it make more sense if we want affordable housing to just get rid of minimums and garage requirements and say, hey, as long as it's safe, you can build a 100 square foot house for all we care. We just want you to have an affordable house. Why do we have those minimums?
Yeah, well, and I voted for those minimums. It's one of the things that I maybe have a little regret.
Really?
Because I think it's maybe a little bit too restrictive exactly to that point. And we've made exceptions, and I knew we had exceptions to our policy for infill houses. I think The piece where that minimum really applies is when you're building a new development and you want to make sure that the value of that development is going to be enough that it covers the cost of the infrastructure to replace it and generates enough tax revenue over its life to essentially be self-supporting.
Yeah.
But, to your point, from a housing perspective, one of the things that I try and talk about is we need more housing of all types at all price points. We need that housing diversity. We maybe have an even greater need in that affordable range, but part of why we struggle from an affordable housing is if you're a family that's in a house today that would be, you might be in your starter home because you can't find that next step up, or you may be staying in a home as a retiree because you can't find that townhome or condo that you want.
Right.
And so part of the solution is building that variety of housing and building that variety of price points so that, my goal is if you want to live in Des Moines, no matter how you want to live, you can find that type of housing here.
Yeah, and I understand from like a supermarket standpoint, right? If we had like houses on a shelving system, we want a diversity of houses. And I do know some, I won't call them out by name. I was just like, I'm going to call them out. But I do know some people who wanted to live in Des Moines and chose not to because they couldn't get a house that was large enough for their growing family. So this is actually an issue.
Yep.
But like why don't we let the free market do it? Or why isn't the free market doing it? If people really do want larger houses in Des Moines, do we let people build them? Why aren't they building them? Is there a reason people aren't building them? Obviously, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we're starting to get some of that happening. We've got new townhomes that are going up that are, a couple thousand square feet, $400,000 new homes. We've got, if you look in that Southwestern Hills neighborhood off of 63rd, they're nice, good sized homes going up. They're in some places large infill homes. One of the challenges that we have as a city is, we're largely developed, although we have some really good places that can develop. It's just getting some folks to think about those areas and developing those areas.
Yeah.
Because people don't always think about new homes in the Des Moines area. But, a really good example of something that we have an opportunity, like Echo Valley by the golf course out there. There's developable land right there in Des Moines proper. Part of it, the Norwalk side of it is developing. There's no reason that we can't get homes built in the Des Moines side. So
Norwalk side's developing, but the Des Moines side's not. And this isn't a trick question. There's no drama on this podcast. That's what's in the title. I don't know. Do you know why? Have developers come to you and said, we're not going to develop there because of X, Y, and Z? Is there a reason?
No. I don't think there's a good reason. One of the things, and in this case, I think it's Norwalk schools. So sometimes people will say the schools, although I think Des Moines public schools are great. My kids are Des Moines public school kids. I was a Des Moines public school kid.
Right, you went to Roosevelt, I think,
yeah. I've got every confidence in the Des Moines public schools. I don't think that should be any reason why, but sometimes there's perception issues, unfair as they may be, that can contribute. That's not the reason there. Sometimes they talk about tax differential, but that's part of why we have policy to address that. We've got abatement to try and lure that new construction. And so it's just making the case and helping people get over that final hurdle, because we've got advantages that you're that much closer to downtown and all of the amenities when you're on the Des Moines side.
Yeah, and I know that you're passionate about downtown, and we might actually, I'm going to write a note here because I didn't want to. Well, I didn't have that written down, but we maybe go into downtown if we have the time. One of the things that might affect housing is the energy and water benchmarking ordinance. I think that was passed by the City Council in 2019, correct?
Yes. Now, I will say that doesn't impact housing because what we passed in 2019 was targeted at the largest buildings.
Now, wouldn't that be, though, mixed? Or if residential was in a 25,000 square foot, wouldn't that include housing then?
Certainly it would include multifamily, like apartments in a 25,000 square foot or more. But it also, one of the exceptions, you don't have to benchmark until you're at least 5 years old. Mm-hmm. So wouldn't impact a new construction.
Now, because basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, but basically the idea here is that people that fit that category have to submit their energy bills and water bills, correct? To the city.
It's not the bills, it's the use.
Consumption, correct?
Right.
Yes.
Right. So the idea is just the simple act of disclosure. Mm-hmm. It works. So you talked about let the market decide a little bit.
Right.
It's essentially the disclosure. Markets rely on information. Mm-hmm. Correct. And so having that information out there, for those who want to shop on it, all of a sudden you can look around and say, okay, I want to be in this office space. I know I'm going to be responsible for utility bills. Office X is a low performer from a utility perspective. Office Y is a high performer. I want to choose the high performer. Or alternatively, it sends a message and maybe they want to compete and they know that they're going to have renters and tenants who will look at that issue. They might then make that investment to become a high performer. That's the idea behind benchmarking is you use the act of disclosure, you use this idea of competition to help improve performance.
Right. Now, if someone is going to looking at buying or transferring a building like that, they can request that information in the buying process, right? So why does the city need to be kind of in that middleman? I mean, because basically people will be providing you the data, but if someone requested that data without this ordinance in place, they'd still get the data, right?
So one of the things when we do benchmarking is we put it through software, so it's not just the raw data. Mm-hmm. And by going through the benchmarking performance, it compares like building uses to other like building uses. So if you're in office space, it looks at, it takes the square footage and those sort of raw numbers and the performance, and it has the advantage of looking in similar climate types, similar uses, and comparing that building. So it's really hard to just look at the raw data and say, oh, that's a good performing building or not. But when that data gets entered into a database that compares across multiple buildings, that's something that you can't do as an individual. And that's the piece from a comparison perspective, knowing, okay, this building's a top performing building or this is a low performing building. You don't know that without that next step. Yeah.
So you mentioned the schools just a bit ago. So I want to go back to that a little bit. That is one of the things, by the way, you're interested in as mayor. You want to, I think it was something on your website about giving first responders the resources they need and introducing resources to reduce gun violence. Those are things that obviously are very much in the news now. And there are political views left and right on that, which we're not going to get into. But if you were elected mayor, could we start by reinstituting the SRO program? Because when we see a gun violence concern and getting officers and first responders the resources they need, to a lot of people, it makes a lot of sense to reinstitute that program. And we've even been seeing kids and mothers on the news saying, why don't they have people in the schools protecting us anymore? As mayor, is there a solution there?
Yeah. So one of the things, you want to be collaborative with the school district, because that's going to be a partnership with the district, and any solution needs to work from the folks in the building,
right?
And all the folks making the decision, the administrators. And we're certainly, even if our officers aren't in the building, we're going to 100% be responsive to the buildings and continue to work with them. So it's thinking about what they need. And it's also thinking about sort of that mix. And it's not always just the law enforcement piece of it. It's thinking about, from a first responder perspective, we've started doing some of this with the CARE program, when sometimes what's needed is not an officer, it's a mental health worker or a social worker. And that applies in our school buildings too. And so thinking about how we partner and make sure that the right service responds the first time. because that's going to be more efficient and it's going to help build up the community.
Yeah, and I don't think a first responder though. I don't think a mental health care worker, not to be combative at all, but I don't think a mental health care worker could do much of anything at this recent school shooting, right? Maybe by some stroke of the wild imagination, they can calm someone down a little bit. But at the end of the day, there's still no officer presence in the schools. And even when we have larger events, I don't know if this is a law, you actually may know this, but even when we have larger events, there are requirements to have either an officer or a security professional on site when there's over a certain population in that space. But it seems like that same thinking doesn't apply to the schools for some reason.
Certainly. I think the schools are, again, we got to work with the schools in terms of what they need. I know, for example, Des Moines Public Schools in their budget was significantly increasing security measures that were tailored to meet their buildings and their needs. And we're going to partner with them and work to make sure that they have their resources that they need. There are a whole host of things. When you talk about what happened in Nashville and the tragedy there, and I don't want to get too political, but
yeah, that's okay.
Some of it starts even before that person walks in the
100%.
building. There were alarms raised, and that's where red flag laws, I think, are important because there are some people who we know may be a danger to themselves and others, and ensuring that if we have those indicators that someone is a danger to themselves or others, doing everything we can to make sure that they don't have a firearm that can harm themselves and others is, I think, a reasonable and important step, and a step that our public expects us to take.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think the tragedy of red flag laws is the name. Now that name has been kind of drugged through the partisan mud. But if you really talk to hardcore conservatives and hardcore people on the left, hardcore liberals, they actually agree. A lot of them agree on this model. I think most of them I think the conflict or the point of clarification is, as long as you're a lawyer, as long as due process is observed, which is possible, this stuff can be a reality. We can follow the Constitution and still give people their rights and still expedite this stuff. So to your point, you're absolutely right. By the time something happens like that, we've missed something. We've already failed somewhere.
Right.
But I know a lot of people are just concerned, but sometimes we do need to have that immediate action. But so what I'm hearing, just to put a cap on that one, is right now, no foreseen change if you were to become mayor.
Right. We'll continue talking with the school district. That was a decision that was made in partnership with the school district. We don't get to tell them what they do in their buildings. We have to work collaboratively with them and work on solutions with them. And I'm committed 100% to making sure that we do our part in that partnership to keep our schools safe. So
let's move on to Vision Zero. And tell me a little bit about this vision that you have to zero is pretty big thinking, right? To eliminate traffic fatalities in Des Moines. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the city is undergoing a comprehensive Vision Zero plan right now. We're not the first to do it, but just to put things in perspective, we had 20 traffic fatalities in 2022. And the goal is a lot of those deaths are preventable. And we should do the things that we can to try and make it safer for our residents. We want everyone to go home at the end of the night safely. That applies across the board. That should be the goal for traffic fatalities. It should be the goal for homicides. We should be doing everything we can to reduce both of those things. And on the traffic side, we know there are things that work. We can use data to identify, okay, this is a hot spot where we have a lot of, I think they're labeled in the study high injury network. We know that there are places where more crashes happen and the crashes are more serious. And there are steps that we can take, either road design, speed design, a handful of things that we can do that will make that road safer, reduce the likelihood of crashes. And then also, it's not just reducing the likelihood of crashes, but if you can change things so that when crashes occur, they're less likely to be fatal. And we should be taking those steps. And that has not just a public safety benefit, it has an economic benefit too.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because people want to be on those streets and in those neighborhoods more too.
So what does that look like exactly? Because that's very difficult, right? Like, and when people hear making streets safer, some people hear reducing speed limits everywhere, and no one wants to reduce speed limits. Everyone wants to get where they're going 80 miles an hour, right? Except for some people. I want to get there faster, Mayor Mandelbaum. So how can I get there faster, but we still protect what does that look like specifically?
Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things, you say no one wants to reduce the speed limit, and I think anecdotally I can disagree on that.
I mean, sure, maybe some people do.
Well, everyone wants to reduce the speed on the street that they live on.
Oh, right? Fair.
I hear that all over. In one of our most popular programs, we have a traffic calming program for residential streets. And that's actually an oversubscribed program. And it's data driven, but it's resident initiated is one of the ways to start it, is they identify, okay, the residents come in and say, hey, we've got a speeding problem on our street. We'll send out our traffic engineers to study it. And if it turns out that they actually do have a speeding problem based on what we monitor, it's eligible for traffic calming. And we identify, okay, speed humps work, or are there other design changes? And then you need 60% of the residents to sign off. Like if you're making that.
So you're not just shoving this down people's throats.
You're not. Now there's still maybe disagreement among neighbors.
No, but not in Des Moines.
I mean, everyone, I joke, if you agree with me 60, 70% of the time, we're pretty
doing
close,
well.
Right? If you agree with me all the time, you probably need, you might need to see someone about that, because I'm not, like, no one should agree with me that often, right? My wife doesn't agree with me that often.
It's a great campaign slogan. If you agree with me 100%, you should see somebody about that. Put that on a t-shirt.
But that's a high demand, because people want the streets that they're on to be safe. And the friction is the people who maybe are driving through that neighborhood. They're more concerned about how quickly they get there. And it's the same thing sort of citywide. And really the goal is we want our city to be a place that people drive to or go to, not go through. And so in some cases that may mean slowing things down or changing things a bit, and take some getting used to. But the model on the Ingersoll corridor is a really good model. We've slowing things down on that street, and it's a high demand street from a business perspective. It's a street that
it really is.
It feels great to walk down that street.
It does. Yep.
And we can recreate that. We've started doing some of that on 6th Avenue, and we've done some of that, and I think we're going to hopefully see some economic development and growth that follows along with it. And so it's not just, again, it's a traffic safety piece, but it's also the type of thing that increases accessibility. People feel comfortable walking to the places in their neighborhood or biking to the places in their neighborhood. Businesses want to be in those areas. And so it feeds off of each other. So we might talk about it as a traffic safety strategy, but it's broader than that.
Yeah, and to your point, the Ingersoll thing, when they took it from, wasn't it 4 lane, and they took it down to two with the turning lane, right?
Right.
And to your point, that is when businesses started coming in there and moving in, and it does flow really well, because everyone knows if you're in that left lane in a 2, that person in front of you might stop at any given time. And now you don't worry about that, because that's what the middle lane's for. So it is remarkably well. It does work really well. And I would like to see more of those. It is good stuff.
But, I mean, design like that, the average person essentially sets the speed of the roadway.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. So this gets into, you just mentioned a little bit, walkability. And this is something that I feel in Des Moines, Iowa in general is really difficult to pull off, because, we were in Paris. My wife and I were in Paris last year. And one thing that really struck me was the subway gets you everywhere. Paris is huge. I did not know how massive that city is. It is huge. But you go any direction, you drop into a subway, you can get across the entire city dirt cheap for like a few minutes. It's insanely amazing. But Des Moines, we're kind of a drive city. We're kind of spread out. Like, I know that my wife was looking at taking DART to work once, and her commute, it's like 5 minutes if she drives, but it was like 50 minutes if she took DART because she had to go downtown and come back up and around. So is walkability, which I love the idea of, I loved it when I was in Paris, and when I go to Manhattan, it's great. Is that realistically achievable here without spending like billions of dollars on subway systems and carving out new roads?
It is. I mean, we've got to be thoughtful about it. I mean, we're not going to change things overnight. But one of the things, in 2019, we added a complete streets policy. And so when we're going and reconstructing a road, Fleur Drive's a good example. That policy says, okay, when we redesign that road to reconstruct it, we need to think about all modes, not just the folks driving. Oh. And Fleur Drive's a great example of this. There weren't sidewalks on Fleur Drive.
Right.
But think about the folks who live on Fleur Drive. You're in a prime spot, right? If you have a sidewalk, you can walk to one of the best parks in the entire metro, Grays Lake Park. The other direction, you can walk to 2 or 3 grocery stores. There's a Fairway and a Hy-Vee all on that corridor.
Yep, that's true.
And without that sidewalk piece, I mean, you didn't have that. And,
yeah.
So when you add those things in as you're going back and doing work, it's a little bit easier to do some of that. But we also just need to be mindful of it in the planning process. I mean, we've done that, for example, on 6th Avenue with that road diet. We added a sidewalk and a wider path, so people of all modes. So it's still a driving street, right? I mean, if we go to the North Side Library or the Slow Down Cafe, we drive down 6th Avenue.
Mm-hmm, true.
But the people in the neighborhood have the option to walk now to some of those things.
Right.
And feel a little safer and more comfortable doing that. And we just need to think about how we do some of that. And in some cases, it's a wiser use of our dollars. I'll give you another example. It's just outside of that Ingersoll stretch, but and this is something that the neighbors brought to me, both the neighbors from the neighborhood as well as the neighboring businesses. Big Grove just went in on Ingersoll.
Right. Yeah.
Hugely popular. I mean, large space and packed, right? And we're sitting there with that stretch of Ingersoll that's the old school stretch of Ingersoll. It's 2 lanes each direction with a center turn lane and nowhere near that type of traffic. And we can use the same space, add on-street parking that doesn't exist there, add a bike lane, make people feel a little more comfortable walking. That parking is going to support Big Grove and other businesses that go in. But in adding that sort of buffer, one of the top complaints I get are people from Sherman Hill who want to walk down to the downtown school with their kids in the morning, and crossing 5 lanes of traffic. They feel really unsafe, with their 6-year-old who maybe crosses the street a little slowly. You help solve that too. And you take that barrier, that 5 lanes, which was dividing a neighborhood from all those amenities in our downtown, and you remove that barrier. You make Des Moines actually feel
how do you remove
a little
that?
smaller.
Like, do you reduce the lanes there too, or
right? So you do a parking lane.
So you bring the Ingersoll thing all the way through,
right?
Oh my gosh! Wow.
You bring a parking lane and maybe a bump out. So instead of, it makes a big difference if you have that bump out there by the parking when you're crossing, 20 feet as opposed to 50 feet.
It also makes a difference for the people that have lived here for a while, and all of a sudden we realize that our lane's getting cut off, and we're like, "Oh crap! It didn't used to be this way."
Right.
Go ahead, then we'll move on. But go ahead.
But you realize sometimes you don't need all those things.
Right. No, I totally agree.
And it's like, why are we paying to maintain a road that is too big?
Yeah.
We don't need to. We can get something better for our dollars.
Right. Real quick thought, will Fleur be done by 2060?
So we're
every week.
Yeah, well, when it started, it was a
if it can be done by the time I'm retired, I mean, that'd be great.
It was from George Flagg to McKinley, so it's still not even the whole stretch.
Yeah.
But that was a 5-year, and we're in year 4 of that. But yeah, we're making progress on it, and I think people will be appreciative once it's done.
Have you seen the ray gun shirt? There used to be a ray gun shirt.
Keep working on yourself like
Des Moines works
drive.
on Fluor or something like that.
Or,
oh my gosh. All right. I expect you to be wearing that when you're campaigning. You could run on that alone and maybe get elected. I don't know. Last thoughts here. Last minute we have. Technically, we're going to be over time in 5 seconds, but we're going to go just 1 minute. One concern I know a lot of downtown people have is I think it was nationwide, I think Wells maybe are basically have announced plans to move out of the downtown core, which leaves some empty real estate. People like myself who've lived here for a long time, you've lived here for a long time, remember the dark days of Des Moines downtown. We remember it was run down. You didn't go downtown, not because it was dangerous, but just because it was run down and boring and there was nothing down there. There was Spaghetti Works was down there. They just closed, sadly. But that was it. And so you have John Papa John, the Sculpture Park, the whole downtown is absolutely incredible now. And Iowans, every time Iowans come to do tournaments and basketball, they're coming into Wells, they're coming into downtown all the time. The whole state comes to, it's basically the state of Iowa's downtown is what it really is. Are we worried about going back to the dark days of downtown with empty buildings? And are you worried about that? And why or why not?
So I'm not worried about going back to the dark days because one of the things, and I like talking about this particularly in downtown, our diversity is our strength. So our downtown at one point used to just be a business district. And when that's all you have, in a moment like this pandemic, that would be a major worry. But our downtown isn't just a business district. I always have to remind folks, our downtown's a neighborhood. We've got 15,000 plus people living there. And I think we could have a lot more people living there. We've got amenities, Wells Fargo Arena, the Sculpture Park, the Science Center, hopefully a new soccer stadium.
That's right. I almost forgot about that.
Those type of amenities will always draw people here because those are attractions beyond the workday and are things that you can't replicate elsewhere. And so the more that we have that diversity, those things support each other, right? I mean, where else can you work? And, it's baseball season. You can go and grab a lunch at Principal Park and watch 6 innings of a baseball game over your lunch hour.
You feel legit. You feel like a high roller when you take a lunch. I've done this. I just had a couple a big gap, and I took a business lunch at Principal Park. You feel like a high roller when you do that, rolling up with a hot dog and watching. I mean, that's it right there.
Right. I mean, that's a great thing. And,
it is a really great thing. I love that.
And you get that in downtown. You don't get that anywhere else.
Yeah.
And there are those pieces. And downtown is going to continue to be attractive to folks. So, we have a Wells Fargo, which I'd rather have Wells Fargo stay. But then you have the example of Open Loop, which is a telehealth company. It's part of the new economy. They're taking 8 stories of a building that had long been empty.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great point.
And you're going to have that. And part of what draws an Open Loop, you're close to the workforce. You have those amenities. The way our metro is developed, downtown is still going to be the heart of the metro. I mean, we've got western suburbs, but we've also got eastern suburbs. We've got Altoona and Waukee.
It's so funny how I don't want to. Nationwide and Wells Fargo have been very good to Des Moines, but it's kind of these older businesses, these legacy businesses, are almost moving out of the way for the open loops, which I think Open Loop. I know the Open Loop guys and gals, but I kind of think they're going to be Des Moines' first unicorn. I think they're going that direction. We've run out of time, but Councilman Josh Mandelbaum is running for mayor of Des Moines. And if people want to learn more about you, what you stand for, what you're campaigning for, how do they do that? Yeah, well, follow along. We've got a website, votemandelbaum.com. We've also got pages on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. So follow along, reach out. I'd be happy to sit down and have a conversation with all of you too. Councilman, thank you so much for coming in here and coming on the Iowa podcast. I appreciate it. Great to be here. And to my fellow Iowans, Iowa expats, and Iowans at heart, thanks for listening and subscribing to the Iowa Podcast.